A millionaire scorns his pregnant wife in public for another woman years later. Hello, welcome, enjoy, subscribe, and activate notifications. In the gleaming morning sun, the windows of the skyscraper shimmered blindingly at the 50th floor. John Marshall surveyed the sprawling city below with a contented smirk. His empire of glass and steel stood as a testament to his meteoric rise. "Mr. Marshall, your next meeting starts in 5 minutes," announced his assistant over the intercom. "Thanks, Sarah. I'll be there shortly," replied John, adjusting his silk tie. As he headed toward the conference room, flashes of memory invaded his mind. John saw himself again as an ambitious young graduate determined to conquer Silicon Valley. "You won't last a week here, kid," scoffed an older colleague, clenching his fists. John remembered the rage and determination those words sparked. "Look at me now," he muttered to himself, cold gleam in his eyes. Miles away, in a luxurious apartment overlooking Golden Gate Park, Anna Marshall prepared to go out. Her hands trembled slightly as she applied her lipstick. "You can do this, Anna," she told her reflection. "It's just lunch with your husband." But it wasn't just any lunch, and she knew it. Anna touched her still flat belly, where a secret grew that could change everything. "How will I tell him?" she whispered, anxiety tightening her chest. Back at the office, Jan closed another multi-million-dollar deal. "Congratulations," John said, one of the executives, shaking his hand. "You just added another jewel to your crown." John smiled, but the warmth didn't reach his eyes. "That's what we're here for, isn't it? To build empires." Meanwhile, Anna entered the mall, her heart pounding. She looked at the gleaming storefronts, remembering how Jane used to surprise her with gifts in the early years of their marriage. "Mrs. Anna called a smiling saleswoman. "We have some new pieces that would look perfect on you." Anna forced a smile. "Thank you, but not today. I'm just waiting for my husband for lunch." The saleswoman nodded understandingly. "Of course. Enjoy your lunch." Anna walked toward the restaurant, her hands protectively over her belly. She took a deep breath, gathering courage. "It's now or never," she murmured to herself as she entered. The maitre greeted her with a smile. "Mrs. Marshall, welcome. Your husband has not arrived yet, but your table is ready." Anna nodded and followed him. As she sat down, her mind wandered to the future. She imagined a baby in her arms, John's proud smile, a happy family. But a persistent voice in her head whispered doubts. John was always so busy, so focused on his empire. Would there be room for a baby in his life? Anna checked her watch, nervous. John was late as usual. She picked up the menu, more to occupy her hands than from real hunger. "You can do this," she repeated to herself. "Yuk, be a family, everything will be fine." Little did she know that in a few minutes her world would turn upside down, and the glass empire that John had built would begin to show its first cracks. Anna tapped her fingers on the table, her gaze alternating between the restaurant entrance and the watch on her wrist. John was late as usual, she sighed, trying to calm her nerves. Then she saw him, but he was not alone. John entered the mall, his imposing figure drawing looks at his side. A dazzling woman laughed at something he said, her hand resting casually on his arm. Anna's blood froze in her veins. She recognized the woman immediately. "Maria, the new executive at John's company." "It can't be," she murmured in disbelief, unable to contain herself. Anna stood and walked toward the entrance of the restaurant, her eyes fixed on the approaching couple. "John," she called, her voice trembling slightly. John turned around, surprise and something more, guilt crossing his face, before being replaced by a mask of indifference. "Anna," he said coldly, "what are you doing here?" Maria looked from one to the other, a malicious smile playing on her lips. "We had a lunch scheduled," Anna replied, struggling to maintain her composure. "Don't you remember?" Jane shrugged. "Must have slipped my mind. I'm busy, as you can see." Anna's heart squeezed. "John, I need to talk to you. It's important. Now is not a good time." He cut her off, his voice as cold as ice. Maria laughed, a sharp and cruel sound. "Oh dear, don't you get it? John has more important things to do than have lunch with a trophy wife." Anna felt tears burn in her eyes. "John, please. Enough, Anna." John exploded, his voice echoing through the mall. "Can't you see? You're embarrassing us. Go home. I don't have time for your dramas." The silence that followed was deafening. Passers-by stopped, mouth agape at the scene unfolding. Anna felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Her world was crumbling before her eyes. "How could you?" she whispered, the tears Finally falling, John rolled his eyes and patient grow up. Anna, that's how the real world works now, if you'll excuse us, he made to move past. Her Maria still clinging to his arm, a triumphant smile on her face. It was too much for Anna. With a choked ah, she turned and ran, pushing people out of her way, desperate to escape the nightmare. "Oh my God, did you see that?" whispered a woman to her friend. "Poor woman," another replied, casting a disdainful look at John. A middle-aged man stepped forward, clear indignation on his face. "Man, that's not right. Your wife deserves more respect." John ignored him, his cold eyes following Anna's fleeing figure for a moment before turning to Maria. "Leighton, go," he said, leading her away from the crowd that was forming. Anna ran aimlessly, her tears clouding her vision. She bumped into people, tripped over her own feet, but did not stop. "Are you okay, ma'am?" asked the security guard, concerned. She just shook her head, unable to speak, and continued running. Finally, Anna found herself outside the mall, the cold air of San Francisco hitting her tear-stained face. She stopped, gasping, the hand resting instinctively on her belly. "Oh God," she sobbed, "what am I going to do now?" Inside the mall, people continued talking about the scene they had witnessed. "Did you see his face? Not a hint of remorse," said a teenager to her friends. "Men like him never change," replied an older woman, shaking her head sadly. Meanwhile, Janan and Maria exited the mall, seemingly oblivious to the tumult they had caused. "Well, that was interesting," Maria commented, a malicious smile on her lips. John shrugged his face, a mask of indifference. "Shake, get over it. She always does." But as he climbed into his luxurious car, a small voice at the back of his mind whispered that maybe this time he had gone too far. Anna, alone on the crowded sidewalk of San Francisco, hugged herself, feeling more lost and alone than ever. The dream of a happy family she had nurtured just hours earlier now lay in pieces at her feet. With one last look at them all, she turned and began to walk, not knowing where she was going, but certain she could not go back. Anna entered her apartment, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The silence enveloped her, only broken by the ticking of the clock on the wall. She slid to the floor, her back against the door, and finally let the sobs take over. The memories came unrelenting. She remembered 5 years ago. "John, where are we going?" laughed Anna, her eyes blindfolded. "Patience, love," John replied, guiding her gently. "We almost there." When he removed the blindfold, Anna gasped. They were at the top of the Empire State Building, New York City, sparkling below. "Anna," John said, "will you make me the happiest man in the world by marrying me?" The contrast between that memory and the current reality was too painful. Anna slowly got up, staggering toward the bedroom. Her eyes landed on the wedding photo on the nightstand. John was looking at her with so much love in that image. Where had that man gone? With trembling hands, Anna opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Each garment she placed inside felt like a piece of her heart being ripped out. "I can't stay here anymore," she murmured to herself, silent tears rolling down her face. She stopped in front of the desk, picking up a pen and paper. The words flowed, a mix of pain, disappointment, and a glimmer of hope for the uncertain future. "John, when we got married, I promised to be by your side in joy and in sorrow. But I never imagined that the sorrow would come from you. Today, I saw in your eyes that the man I fell in love with no longer exists. Maybe he never really did. I can't keep living a lie. I'm leaving, taking not only my shattered hopes, but also a new life. Yes, John, I'm pregnant. Maybe someday you'll understand what you've lost. Until then, goodbye." Anna, she folded the letter, leaving it on the perfectly made bed. With one last look at the apartment that once felt like home, Anna picked up her suitcase and left. Hours later, John entered the apartment, loosening his tie. "Anna," he called, his voice echoing in the silence. Frowning, he walked through the rooms until he reached the bedroom. His eyes immediately noticed the letter on the bed. As he read it, his face went from confusion to shock, and finally to anger. He crumpled the paper, throwing it against the wall. "Damn it, Anna," he yelled at the empty room. "You can't just walk out like that." But she could, and she did. The sound of applause echoed in the luxurious hall. John Marshall, impeccable in his Armani suit, smiled at the crowd of executives and celebrities surrounding him. He had just closed the biggest deal of his career, cementing his empire and his status as the king of Silicon Valley. A toast to John Marshall. exclaimed the CEO of a rival company, raising his champagne glass. The man who transformed the industry glasses clinked, and Janan drank the bubbly liquid flowing down his throat, but the taste was bitter, and the smile on his face didn't reach his eyes. Hours later, John entered his luxury apartment. Loosening his tie, Maria followed him, staggering slightly on her high heels. "What a party, John," she laughed, throwing herself onto the leather sofa. "Did you see the faces of those fools when you announced the merger?" "Priceless," John only grunted in response, pouring himself a whiskey. Maria frowned. "What wrong? You just made history. You should be celebrating." "I'm tired, Maria," John replied dry. "Maybe you should go home." "Go home?" Maria stood up, indignant. "I thought I'd be staying here tonight. After all, we should be celebrating, right?" John looked at her, suddenly irritated by her presence. "Look, I really need to be alone. Now we can talk tomorrow." Maria looked at him incredulously. "Are you kicking me out after everything we've been through together?" "It's not that, it's just that." "No, I understand perfectly," Maria interrupted, grabbing her purse. "You got what you wanted, and now you don't need me anymore." Right before John could respond, she was gone, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. John walked to the window, watching the city that never sleeps below. Millions of lives continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding at the top of that skyscraper. His eyes landed on a photo on the shelf, him and Anna on their wedding day. She was radiant, and even in the photo the love in her eyes was palpable. John picked up the frame, his thumb brushing Anna's face. "What have I done?" he murmured to himself. In the days that followed, John dove even deeper into work. Endless meetings, aggressive negotiations, nights spent at the office. He was determined to fill the void he felt with more success, more money, more power. One particularly stressful afternoon, his assistant entered his office, hesitant. "Mr. Marshall, there's a man here to see you. He says he's an old friend." John frowned. "I don't have old friends. Send him away." But before the assistant could respond, the door opened, and a middle-aged man walked in. "John, long time no see," the man exclaimed, smiling. John looked at him, confused. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" The man's smile faltered. "John, it's me, Michael. We were roommates in college, remember?" A flicker of recognition passed through John's eyes. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "I'm in town on business, and thought I'd stop by to see how you were," Michael replied, sitting down. "I heard about your success. Congratulations." John nodded. "Uncomfortable, thanks. How have you been?" "I can't complain," Michael smiled. "Business is good. The kids are growing. Sarah sends her regards, by the way. How's Anna?" The name dropped like a bomb in the office. John felt his stomach tighten. "Anna and I were separated." Michael looked at him in surprise. "Oh, John, I'm sorry. You two seemed so happy together." John looked away, unable to face the compassion in his old friend's eyes. "Things change," he said dryly, sensing Junk's discomfort. Michael stood up. "Well, it was good to see you, John. If you need to talk, thanks for the visit." "Michael," John interrupted, standing to see him to the door. When Michael left, John found himself alone again in his vast office. The walls, covered in awards and accolades, seemed to mock him. That night back in the pen house, Jan opened a bottle of very expensive whiskey. He sat on the sofa, glass in one hand and the remote control in the other. On the state-of-the-art television, images of his business conquests played out. "John Marshall, the business genius," exclaimed a presenter. "The man who has it all," said another. John laughed bitterly, draining the contents of the glass. Everything he had: money, power, recognition. But sitting there alone in his luxurious apartment, John Marshall had never felt so empty. He stood up, staggering toward the balcony. Outside, the city glittered indifferent to his pain. Jan looked at the horizon, at the thousands of lit windows, each containing a life, a story, and for the first time in a long time, John Marshall allowed himself to cry. Anna's scream echoed through the halls of Boston General Hospital. She gripped the nurse's hand beside her, sweat running down her face, contorted in pain. "You're doing great," Anna encouraged her. "Lopes, one more push, and your baby will be here." Anna gathered her remaining strength, pushing with everything she had. Suddenly, the room filled with the sharp cry of a newborn. "It's a girl," announced Dr. Lopez, lifting the baby so Anna could see her. Tears ran down Anna's face, mixing with the sweat. "My daughter," she whispered, exhausted but radiant, as the nurses cleaned and weighed Sophia. Anna couldn't take her eyes off her daughter. She was perfect, with a TFT of dark hair and blue eyes that reminded her of Jay and John. The name brought a pang of pain to her heart. He should have been there sharing this moment, but she pushed the thought away, focusing on the tiny life she had just brought into the world. The days that followed were a mix of joy and exhaustion. Anna, now at home with Sophia, discovered the challenges of being a single mother. "Sure, it's okay, my love," she murmured, rocking Sophia at 3. In the morning, the baby cried incessantly, and Anna felt completely lost at that moment. The doorbell rang. Confused, Anna went to the door, still cradling Sophia. "Mrs. Perez," an elderly lady smiled kindly. "I'm Edna, your neighbor from 3B. I heard the baby crying and thought maybe I could help." Anna hesitated for a moment, but exhaustion spoke louder. "Please come in," she said, grateful. Edna took Sophia into her arms with the confidence of someone who had raised many babies in minutes. Sophia was calm, her little eyes slowly closing. "How did you do that?" asked Anna, amazed. Edna smiled. "Years of practice, dear. I raised 5 kids and helped raise 7 grandchildren. If you need help, just call." Anna felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling less alone for the first time in months. Weeks passed, and Anna gradually found her rhythm as a mother, but something worried her. Sophia seemed different, quieter than other babies, with a slightly bluish tint to her lips. Concerned, Anna made an appointment with the pediatrician. Ramirez examined Sophia carefully, his face serious. "Mrs. Perez," he finally said, "I've detected a heart murmur in Sophia. I'd like to run some additional tests." Anna's world seemed to crumble. Is it serious?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We can't be sure yet," Dr. Ramirez replied gently, "but the sooner we diagnose, the better Sophia's chances will be." The days that followed were a whirlwind of tests and consultations. Finally, the diagnosis: Sophia had a congenital heart condition. "She'll need surgery," explained the cardiologist, "and constant monitoring." Anna nodded, determined. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, looking at Sophia, who slept peacefully in her arms between medical appointments and caring for Sophia. Anna barely had time to breathe, but an idea began to form in her mind. Sitting at the kitchen table, Sophia sleeping in the crib beside her, Anna began to sketch out a plan. She remembered her work as a teacher, the children she met who lacked access to quality education. What if, she murmured to herself, scribbling furiously in a notebook. The next morning, Anna called. Edna, could you watch Sophia for a few hours? There's something I need to do with Sophia in reliable Edith's care." Anna went to City Hall. Hours later, she returned home exhausted but hopeful. "How did it go, dear?" asked Edna, handing Sophia to Anna. Anna smiled, kissing her daughter's forehead. "I took the first step toward realizing a dream," she replied. "I'm going to open a school for underprivileged children." Edna looked at her, surprised and admiring. "That's wonderful, Anna, but are you sure you can handle this?" And Sophia. Anna looked at her daughter, feeling a determination she hadn't felt in a long time. "I have to try." Edna, for Sophia, and for all the children who need a chance. In the month that followed, Anna divided her time between caring for Sophia and planning her school. There were sleepless nights, endless meetings, and moments of doubt, but with every smile from Sophia, with every small victory, Anna felt she was on the right path. One day, standing in front of the building that would soon become her school, Sophia snuggled in her arms. Anna felt a wave of emotion wash over her. "Look, Sophia," she whispered, "this is our new beginning, our chance to make a difference." Sophia said happily, as if understanding. Anna hugged her tightly, her heart full of love and hope for the future. There, in that moment, Anna realized she had found her purpose. The pain of separating from Jin, the challenges of single motherhood, the worries about Sophia's health, all had led her here, and she was ready to face whatever came. "We made it, my little one," Anna murmured to Sophia together. "We can do anything." The office of John Marshall was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional clink of ice in his whiskey glass. It had been 3 years since Anna had left, taking not only their dreams of a life together, but also a secret that John had yet to discover. The phone rang, breaking the silence. John frowned, annoyed by the interruption. "Marshall," he answered brusquely Mr. Marshall. His assistant's voice sounded hesitant. There's a call online too. It's about Mrs. Perez. John's heart skipped a beat. Anna. He hadn't heard that name in years. With trembling fingers, he picked up the call. Hello, Mr. Marshall, a female voice, not Anna's. I'm Dura Lopes from Boston General Hospital. I'm calling about Sophia Perez. John's breath left him. Sophia Perez. Yes, your daughter. J.K.'s world stopped. My daughter. The doctor paused, clearly surprised. Mr. Marshall, our records indicate that you are the father of Sophia Perez, born 3 years ago. She needs urgent heart surgery. The doctor's words turned into a blur as John's mind spun. A daughter. He had a daughter with Anna. Mr. Marshall, are you there? Jane swallowed hard. Yes. Yes, I'm listening. What does Sophia need? As the doctor explained the details of the surgery, John was plunged into memories 5 years ago. John, do you want to have kids? Anna asked, snuggled in his arms on the couch. John laughed. Of course. I imagine a girl with your eyes and my smile. Anna smiled, kissing him softly. She'll be perfect. 3.5 years ago. John, I need to tell you something. Anna began, nervous. But John interrupted her, checking his phone. Sorry, love. I have an important meeting. Can we talk later? Anna nodded, disappointed. Sure, later. But later never came. Weeks later, John would humiliate her publicly at the mall, and Anna would leave forever. Back in the present, John hung up the phone, stunned. He had a daughter who was sick and needed him. With trembling hands, he took out his personal phone, searching for Anna's number. He hesitated for a moment before pressing call. The call went directly to voicemail. Anna, he began, his voice hoarse. I just found out about Sophia. Please call me. I need to know everything. Hanging up, John stood abruptly, walking toward the window of his office outside. New York continued its frantic pace, oblivious to the emotional earthquake that had just occurred on the 50th floor. A daughter, he murmured to himself, the reality finally settling in. John spent the following hours in a whirlwind of emotions and activity. He instructed his team of lawyers to find out everything about Sophia Perez and Anna's current whereabouts. He canceled all his meetings for the coming days, ignoring the protests from his partners. Sitting in his office, John found himself looking at old photos on his phone. Anna smiling on the beach, the two of them hugging in front of the Eiffel Tower, the happiness in their eyes on their wedding day. How did we get to this point? He asked aloud that night alone in his apartment. Jane faced a tough decision. He knew he needed to go to Boston, see Sophia, talk to Anna. But that would mean leaving behind everything he had built over the past years. Maria called several times, but John ignored all her calls. Finally, he answered. John, where are you? We have that dinner with the investors tonight, said Maria, irritation evident in her voice. John took a deep breath. Maria, I can't go. Something happened, something that changes everything. What are you talking about? Maria asked, confused. I have a daughter. John said, the words still sounding strange in his ears. With Anna Sheck in Boston, and I need to go there. The silence on the other side of the line was deafening. Finally, Maria spoke, her voice cold. I see. And what about us, John? What about everything we've built together? Jane closed his eyes, guilt and confusion waging a battle within him. I don't know, Maria. All I know is that I need to go to Boston. I need to meet my daughter. After hanging up, John looked at the half-packed suitcase on his bed. In a few hours, he would be on his way to Boston toward an uncertain future. But with one certainty, he was a father and nothing else mattered now but meeting his daughter and mending the past. The taxi stopped in front of Boston General Hospital, and John Marshall felt his heart race after a tense and anxious journey. He was finally there, somewhere inside that imposing building where Anna and the daughter he had only learned about a few days ago. With unsteady steps, John crossed the hospital entrance. The characteristic hospital smell hit his nostrils, bringing a wave of apprehension. He approached the information desk, ready to ask about Sophia Perez, when something caught his eye. In the corner there was Anna. She was talking to a nurse at the end of the hallway, her back to him. Her hair was shorter than John remembered, and there was a new tension in her shoulders. Beside her, holding her hand, was a small figure that made John's heart stop for a moment. Sophia, his daughter. The girl was the image of Anna, with the same golden curls and pure nose. But when she turned her face, John saw his own blue eyes, Looking around with curious eyes for a long moment, John stood paralyzed, unable to move or call out. It was as if time had stopped, and he was trapped in that instant, watching the life he could have had, the family he didn't know existed. It was Sophia who noticed him first. Her blue eyes met his, and for a brief second they stared at each other. The girl tugged at Anna's sleeve, pointing in his direction. Anna turned around, her eyes widening in surprise at seeing John. Air of emotions crossed her face: surprise, fear, anger, and something more that John couldn't decipher. John, she whispered, and although at a distance he could see her lips forming his name, as if waking from a trance, John finally found his voice and his legs. He walked toward them, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone in the hospital could hear it. Anna, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. As he finally got close enough, Anna instinctively pulled Sophia closer as if to protect her, her eyes filled with unshed tears. How did you find out? She asked, her voice a mix of fear and defiance. The hospital called me, John replied, his eyes moving between Anna and Sophia. They needed my authorization for the surgery. Anna closed her eyes for a moment as if gathering strength. When she opened them again, there was fierce determination in them. Let's talk in private, she said, glancing significantly at Sophia. John nodded, following Anna to an empty waiting room. Sophia stayed with the nurse, her curious eyes following the adults as soon as the door closed behind them. Anna turned to John, her emotions finally overflowing. How dare you show up like this? She hissed, years of bitterness and anger in her voice. After everything that happened, do you think you can just come back? And Anna, please, John interrupted, his own voice shaking. I know I made terrible mistakes, but I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me about Sophia? Anna laughed bitterly. Tell you when, John? When you were too busy with your meetings, or maybe when you publicly humiliated me at that mall. John felt each word like a stab. I'm sorry, he said, knowing the words were inadequate. I was a fool, but now I want to do the right thing for Sophia. Anna studied him for a long moment as if trying to gauge his sincerity. Finally, she sighed, the anger giving way to weariness. Sophia has a congenital heart condition, she said softly. She needs surgery. That's why we're here. John felt the world spinning around him. His daughter, the girl he had just discovered, was seriously ill. What can we do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anna looked at him, surprised by his use of we. The doctors say the surgery has good chances of success, but it's expensive and recovery will be long. John nodded, determination replacing shock in his eyes. I'll pay for everything, anything Sophia needs. For a moment, Anna seemed about to argue, but then nodded. Thank you, she said simply. There was a soft knock on the door, and the nurse entered with Sophia. The girl looked timidly at John, partially hiding behind Anna's legs. John knelt to Sophia's level. Hello, Sophia, he said softly. I'm your dad. Sophia studied him for a moment before offering a small smile. Hi, she said softly. John felt his heart melt. He tentatively extended his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Sophia took it. Anna watched the scene, a complex mix of emotions on her face: anger for John's years of absence, pain for past mistakes, confusion about what his presence meant for the future, but also buried under all those layers, a small flicker of hope as John awkwardly talked with Sophia, asking about her favorite colors and animals. Anna allowed herself just for a moment to imagine a different future than the one she had planned, a future where perhaps they could be a family, but then reality intruded and Anna pushed those thoughts away. There was much to discuss, much to resolve. For now, she would focus on what was most important: Sophia's health. The rest would have to wait. In the days that followed, John became a constant presence at the hospital. He spent hours by Sophia's bedside, trying to make up for lost time. What's your favorite color? Sophia Jane asked, holding a coloring book. Purple, Sophia replied enthusiastically, her eyes shining. John smiled, handing her the purple crayon. He watched her in wonder as she colored, her small face furrowed in concentration. Anna watched them from the doorway, her heart torn. Seeing John making an effort was comforting and painful at the same time. We need to talk, Anna said softly. When Sophia fell asleep in the hallway, the tension between them was palpable. Why now, John? Anna asked, her voice laden with emotion. Why decide to be a father now? John sighed deeply. I know I made terrible mistakes, but when I found out about Sophia, everything changed. I want to do the right thing, Anna nodded slowly. Still cautious days later, John accompanied Anna to the school she had founded. Walking through the colorful halls, listening to the laughter of the children, John felt a mix of pride and shame. This is incredible, Anna, he said. Sincerely, you've built something wonderful here. Anna smiled slightly, the first genuine smile Jane had seen in years. The moment was interrupted by the sound of John's phone. Maria's name flashed on Fien's screen. Aren't you going to answer? Anna asked, a shadow crossing her face. John hesitated, then turned off the phone. It's not important now. But the past wouldn't remain silent for long. The following afternoon, while John played with Sophia in the hospital room, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. John. Maria's voice cut through the air like a knife. So this is where you've been? John stood abruptly, his face pale. Maria, what are you doing here? Maria's eyes narrowed, sweeping over Jane, Sophia, and Anna, who had just entered the room. I came to see for myself, she said coldly. I see you found your family. The word family sounded like an accusation. John felt the weight of his past choices pressing down on him. Anna took Sophia in her arms, protective. I think you two need to talk, she said, her voice tense. Come on, Sophia Layton, get some ice cream. As he left with Sophia, John faced Maria. Knowing he had difficult decisions ahead, the past and present collided, and he would have to choose. His future weeks passed, and Anna began to notice subtle changes in John. He was more present, more attentive, not just with Sophia, but also with the hospital staff and the children at the school. One day, as she watched John read a story to Sophia, Anna felt something change inside her, a small spark of hope that she quickly tried to suppress. As he really changed, she wondered silently. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the monitors, which began beeping frantically. Sophia, Anna cried, rushing to the bed. John was already there, holding his daughter's hand as doctors and nurses flooded the room. What's happening? John asked, panic evident in his voice. Sheck, having a severe arrhythmia, a doctor explained quickly. We need to stabilize her. The hours that followed were the longest in Anna and Jay's lives. They waited together in the waiting room, their fear uniting them in a way they hadn't felt in years. John took Anna's hand, squeezing it gently. Sheck, be okay, he whispered, more to himself than to Anna. Anna looked at their intertwined hands, a whirlwind of emotions passing through her for the first time in a long time. She didn't pull away. Finally, the doctor came out, looking exhausted but relieved. We've stabilized her. Sophia is out of danger. For now. Relief flooded them, and without thinking, Anna threw herself into Jay's arms. For a moment, they stayed that way, united by their concern and love for their daughter. When Anna pulled away, there was a new vulnerability in her eyes. John, but before she could finish, Maria appeared in the hallway, her heels echoing on the linoleum floor. John, we need to talk, she said, her tone urgent. Anna immediately withdrew. Her defense is rising again. John looked between the two women, clearly divided. Go, Anna said coldly. Sophia is stable now. John hesitated, but followed Maria to a secluded corner. Anna couldn't hear what they were saying, but John's expression grew increasingly somber. When he returned, he looked defeated. Anna, there's something you need to know. Maria interrupted, her voice cutting. Let me tell it, John. After all, I've been there the whole time. What followed was a revelation of secrets and lies from John's past that Anna could never have imagined. Each word was like a knife shredding the newly rebuilt trust. Anna felt her world crumble once more. Without a word, she turned and entered Sophia's room, closing the door behind her. John stood in the hallway, torn between following Anna and dealing with the consequences of his past with Maria. The weight of his choices had never been heavier. John stared at his reflection in the hospital bathroom mirror, the weight of his decision reflected in his eyes. He knew what he had to do. Emerging, he found Maria in the hallway. It's over, he said firmly. I'm going to do the right thing, no matter the cost. Maria looked at him with disdain. Are you throwing everything away for them? No, Jane replied. For me, for the person I want to be. John entered the hospital boardroom, where his company's board awaited him via video conference. Gentlemen, he began, I'm resigning from the company. Additionally, I'm donating my shares to fund Anna's school and Sophia's treatment. Chaos erupted on the screen, but John turned off the call. Exiting, he found Anna. I heard everything, she said, her eyes wide. John, why? Because some things are more important than money or power, he replied. Looking at Sophia through the hospital room window, Anna felt the last barriers in her heart crumble. Thank you, she whispered. Months later, Sophia ran across the playground at Anna's school, fully recovered. John chased her, both laughing. Anna watched them, a smile on her lips. John approached, wrapping her in an embrace. Now, we're a family, he said softly. Anna nodded. Finally, a peace. Yes, we are. As the sun set, the three walked home together, leaving behind the shadows of the past and embracing a future filled with love, forgiveness, and second chances. John looked at Anna and Sophia, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He had paid a high price for his mistakes, but what he gained in return was priceless. He finally understood the true meaning of success and happiness. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the story.